what he had to say about the way Dr. Martin Luther King was actually killed.
Wow. He wasn't killed from the bullet that hit him on the balcony. He was taken to St. Joseph's Hospital, and he was killed in the emergency room of St. Joseph's Hospital by the chief of neurosurgery, Dr. Breen Bland, who came in when they were all working on him in the emergency room, and he said, "Get out of here, let that die." And as they moved out of the room, the last one out was a surgical nurse, Little May Shelby, and when she heard them gathering up spit in their lungs to spit on Martin's body lying on a bed there, then she saw Dr. Bland take the catheters out of Martin's body and take the pillow from under his head and put it over his face and suffocate him. And that's how Martin King died. That's how he was really assassinated. Now, he might have died anyway from the bullet wounds, but he didn't. He was still alive and still breathing. The chief neurosurgeon, he intervened and he made sure that death would result.
Wow. Right? My jaw was on the floor. Now, Dr. Pepper knows this because the son of the nurse, Lula Mae Shelby, who died, but before she died told her family, the son of this nurse told Dr. Pepper under oath. And when Dr. Pepper confronted a member of the Dixie Mafia, he said, yes, this happened, and actually that the chief of surgery was their family doctor, and that 3 weeks before the assassination, he visited them and said, hey, if the bullet doesn't kill him, make sure he goes to St. Joseph's, because we will make sure that he dies. Now let's talk about this case, okay? This was a civil suit in 1999 where Pepper represented the King family, and that really made the family feel like they had closure, and like I said, it was the only trial ever held. The Memphis jury, in this case, decided that local, state, and federal governments were liable for King's death, and that this was a real conspiracy, a conspiracy between the U.S. military, the Memphis PD, and Dixie Mafia, these crime figures in Memphis, Tennessee.
This is just for the audience.
Right.
This is a civil case that was brought, much like the O.J. case,
right,
where they couldn't find him guilty here, but finally when a civil jury heard it, they came out with
the only trial, yes, and there was 30 days of trial, and over 70 witnesses were heard. And Dr. Pepper told me earlier today that it took the jury less than an hour to decide after these 30 days
that this
of
was
trial.
A true conspiracy.
Correct.
Where others may have been involved.
Correct.
Other than the person who was accused.
And that James Earl Ray was the fall man, and that he was unwittingly, unknowingly part of this conspiracy. And the real shooter, I gotta say this even though we can't get to the whole story, was Frank Strouser. He was a Memphis police officer, the best shot in the Memphis PD, and he was the one who actually fired the fatal shot. Here's what he had to say about the way Dr. Martin Luther King was actually killed.
Wow. He wasn't killed from the bullet that hit him on the balcony. He was taken...
All right, y'all. So here's my commentary on that. And this is why it is so important, And I guess the whole topic, I talked about how, what real prestige is, and it's knowledge and self. And it's about not being gullible. When you are gullible, when you do not know who you are, when you hold everybody and everything else higher than you hold you are easily manipulated. You are easily tricked. I talked in the last video about how these people are going after all these name brands and how they think just because they have money, they have something. How people are paying people to do things so that they can sound important because, this person of this name brand reached out and blah, 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 blah. And all of it is garbage, you guys. No, knowledge of self is the highest form of prestige. So last time we talked about how people, associate prestige with name brands, how they associate it with associations and with levels of influence and things like that. And that if you have a certain level of influence, that means that you're prestigious or that you're better. Or that, they feel like if they have a certain title, that it makes you better and that you're going to have access to more things. Only to fools. You know what I'm saying? Nothing. I wish I could tell you guys, like, directly, like, what I see and what I experience, but it doesn't. It just makes you a bigger dummy. You know what I'm saying? Knowledge of self is where the true value, is where the true gold is at. Fast forward to the second part in this, talking about MLK and how MLK died. When we think about knowledge and prestige, and the opposite of knowledge of prestige, right? Is, if someone tells you something is not good, or something is bad, or something puts a record behind somebody, or somebody accuses somebody of something. My mom always said, if you weren't there, you don't know. You know what I'm saying? You don't never accuse anybody of anything you haven't seen. This guy, and I've seen so many stories, and I try to flip past them because I'm so over TikTok trying to show me all the black people getting murdered and killed. I know what happens. You know what I'm saying? But I also know that we don't help each other in our own communities. You know what I mean? And we is not only just minimalized to race, but just as human beings, the human race. We don't help each other as we should. You know, when we see things on social media and things like that, we're like, ooh, you know, this person walked 50 miles to work. Well, boo hoo, you know, I've done that. I've seen other people do it. You know, each of our paths is specifically made for our own design and for ourselves. So the first part again, I talked about how people are looking at prestige as name brands and affiliations and things like that, and it's really not. You know, that's where you when you don't. It's knowledge of self is where the real prestige is, and if you don't know who you are easily tricked, and you are easily gullible to have what the real prestige is, which is yourself, taken from you. Never value anything more than you value yourself. You. And the second part of this is this, you know, Martin Luther King, you know, don't believe the hype. You know, Public Enemy had a song, don't believe the hype. Really, don't believe the hype. And I talked in another video, I believe, about how, you know, there was a professor at a girl that talked about a professor that was Korean at her school that taught African American morals, ethics, something, another, and you know, got to the root of it. You know, and the truth about it is that people are human, and what people you have to be very careful about things that are so loudly advertised and marketed all over the place. You know, when you see, you know, all this thing about how this particular person murdered Martin Luther King, you know, now they tell us that that wasn't the case, and it came about because this guy sounds like he's on his deathbed. If y'all can hear it, this is the purpose of this is a sound check to see if y'all can hear media that I'm sharing with you. But you know how he's on his deathbed and he's telling the story of what really happened. So Martin Luther King didn't die any honorable death. You know, he wasn't working with the government. The government killed him. You know, which, you know, whatever. And we don't even know if that's really true. Like I said, believe half of what you hear and half of what you see and absolutely none of what you hear. You know, the only thing that we do know is that bad things do happen, and a lot of times to good people. You know, that's how it works. And so this guy has his whole reputation tarnished where this dude was sheriff department, whoever he was, head of like I said, when stuff is that traumatic to me, I don't really listen to it. So whatever head department of the sheriff's department and the head neurosurgeon, you know, these people have prestigious titles, and I'm sure they're doing well. You know what I'm saying? Sure, they've been on their job for 20, 30 years, you know, and have a legacy behind it. And their kids are dressed nice. But it's not all about that. You know what I'm saying? These people help murder folks. You know, and it continues on. And that's why I say, you know, when you look at, and I'm gonna start beating myself, which you're not gonna be able to hear me, but when you look at, you know, they call them resumes, but when you look at people's history or the history of businesses and corporations, when you look at it, it tells you exactly what it is. That's why some of the things, you know, recently in Valdosta, and should I share this? I don't feel like pulling it up and sharing it because this is not really one of those types of live streams. But a few days ago in Valdosta, right around the corner somewhere, there was a whole bunch of people um, hanging out somewhere on this particular street. Next thing you know, 3 people get shot. There were some elderly people, like 75 and 80, and then there was somebody that was close to middle age, 35 or so. They got shot. And now the police is asking for the public to help them. And the thing about it is this, it's so much corruption. I don't even want to go there. But yeah, I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm gonna leave that alone. But all I'm saying is this, for the first part of Prestige, I was clear. It's not about name brands and affiliations. It's not about financial wealth. Your real wealth is your knowledge of self. The second part of this is that what the actress is saying, it doesn't matter, because people don't have to like you. They don't have to love you. They don't even have to respect you, which is very evident because Martin Luther King, like I said, not only was he, even the murder by itself, being murdered, period, is not a nice thing. But to be murdered by the chief of police, which sadly sadly, in that era, and probably even still now, you know, it's not a surprise. And to be in coercion with the head of neurosurgery, it's not a surprise. It doesn't surprise me. And when you look at all of the bad things, that the system has done, I mean, it's just, I can't even, it, it's not even hurt. It's like shock. It's like, it's so traumatic that it's shocking where it leaves me damn near speechless. And, when you look at that, I mean, and like I said, I'm not gonna leave it at race. That's why it's so important for good people to connect. You know, and I'm very open minded. I try not to knock people and whatever it is they do. But it's important for good people to connect. To promote goodness in this world. Because look at that crowd. And where I was going with this, and my brain got traumatized because of just the thought of that. Back to what that actress was saying, how no one has to like you. No one has to love you. They don't even have to respect you. But every time you look in the mirror, you better damn sure love whatever it is that you experience, that you see, that you feel when you look at yourself, whether it's with an introspective eye or whether it's with an external eye. And the reason why is because this man, like I said, just being murdered itself is bad enough, but murdered by the people that he was murdered by, okay, for one. And then for two, not only was he murdered, they took the time to spit on him while he was still alive and in that vegetative state or whatever state he was in. And not just spit. They said that they hawked it from the bottom of their depths and spit on him. And then they unplugged everything and then suffocated him. And so that's why it's so important for us to know ourselves, to value ourselves, because things like that happen. And it may not happen the exact same way, but it happens in figurative ways. You might have people that don't have anything nice to say, and they spit on you and regurgitate on you every chance that they have verbally, every chance that they have vibe-wise. It does not make you a lesser of a person. If you know who you are, if you stand 10 toes down in who you are, if you have knowledge of yourself, again, that's the best prestige ever. That's the true prestige. And if you start chasing brand names, if you start chasing affiliations, if you start chasing how other people treat you or look at you or classify you, then it takes away. You're allowing your true wealth, your true prestige, which is your knowledge of self, to be taken away from you. Don't do that. And Martin Luther King had a saying, keep your eyes on the prize, and that is the prize. You are the prize. You are it. You are it. So again, if I had to entitle this one, it would be again on true prestige. And again, knowledge of self, regardless regardless if nobody loves you, if nobody likes you, if nobody respects you, always respect yourself. So self-respect, knowledge of self and self-respect. And I hope that y'all could hear what that person had to say, because I couldn't repeat it or co-repeat it or sub-paraphrase it because it was so traumatizing. My brain would not allow me to. So.